Hello and good day everyone. This is Sarah Batyansela and together with me is Miss Axel Rose Licar, and we are going to discuss about the principles and practices of material adaptation. So before we dig deeper, let's define first these following words: principles, practices, and adaptation. I'm assuming everybody is familiar with those words because we probably heard about it. So according to Dolphin 2018, principles are good ideas or good values stated in a context independent manner. So what do you mean by context independent? It is the learning of a skill or strategy independently of a specific situation in which the skill will be applied, of course. So, talking about the good ideas or good values, that includes being passionate about teaching, and you acquire those skills in order for you to help those students to, of course, acquire the knowledge. And it should be all about developing curiosity, knowledge, and of course, part of good values, you have this genuine care for the students. Now, practices. These are the applications of these principles stated in a context dependent way. So, dependent way, this is where you are able to recall the for example, you're able to recall specific information when the context was present at that time. So, if you're going to apply it in teaching, for example, our lesson plans, the more you practice, then I believe that you will deliver lesson properly and you can recall those important things. And of course, you can uh, modify and enhance on how you uh, on how you are going to organize your materials, and with that you can facilitate the entire class discussion. And of course, adaptation. So to avoid confusion, there is actually a difference between adopt and adapt. So to adopt, ADOPT, that means to take as one's own, or you accept something as your own, while to adapt means to simply adjust or accommodate. So according to Madsen and Bowen, adaptation is defined as one or more of a number of techniques such as supplementing, editing, expanding, personalizing, simplifying, modernizing, localizing, or modifying cultural or situational content. So I'm sure those words are familiar. So meaning to say, if you are um, as a teacher, of course, you implies a more flexible and responsive approach, and you're going to use all of that to change the circumstances depending on the cultural or the situational content. So the big question is, why do we need to adapt materials? So according to McGrath, adapting teaching materials is about effecting changes to make them suitable for learners and their needs. So in adapting materials, you have to fit the requirements of particular learning situation, and of course it must be widely recognized. So um, aside from that, it should be according to their needs, because remember, we are going to use the learner-centered approach that teachers should cater or address all the essential needs of learners, and of course to ensure the learners get that experience. So for example, in a certain learner groups that they want games and exercises. So what are you going to do? So you should have those activities that, of course, which is that are relevant to the subject, that's important, and it must be interactive and collaborative. And of course, in developing materials or activities, should be depends on the present learners. So you adapt and adapt as the time goes on, because we have diverse learners now. Another one that we should always take note is that there will never be a perfect fit between materials, the teachers, and the learners. Why is that? It is due to the individual differences among the learners and of course to the teachers, because teachers have their own personal experience and of course their preferred teaching style. So yeah, so Nia, how here we have ways in adapting a materials, or why. So in adapting a material, you must make the materials interesting. This is to simply keep the students motivated to learn and of course to develop their curiosity. Next is make learning activities relevant and purposeful. So we should keep this question in mind, like what are my students interested now, or what are my students interested in, or will my students use this in the real world. So we should consider that students need a personal connection to the material, because whether that's through engaging them emotionally, or connecting a new information with previously acquired knowledge, and but without that, students may not only quickly forget, but they may also lose the motivation to try. And thirdly, meet the learner's needs, both external and psychological. Now you have to know and meet their needs, their mental capacity, their external, like their status or their geographic location, their communication style, perhaps their race, their beliefs, because again we have diverse learners. And lastly, use models of real authentic language. Now authentic material is any material, probably if you're going to apply it in SLA, it's any material written in English that was of course not created for intentional use in the English classroom. So using this content of course to teach the English language, and can make the learning process more engaging, imaginative, and of course motivating for the students. And if you introduce authentic English materials into their lessons, then you are exposing your learners to the language as if it is spoken to in the real world. So that's the for one. And now let's move on to the key learners variable. So the materials, of course, are intended to be used by the largest possible numbers of learners. So it should be wide. So of course, at least you should know this in order for you to adapt the materials. So here are some of the key variables. So first is personality. So personality, of course, this affects the materials that we want to design, because probably learners might be introverted or extroverted, and so the materials that we should design should encourage especially those shy student in the classroom. Next is motivation. So of course, as teacher, we should design activities or materials to motivate our students. And attitude, that is of course to um, let's say that they can learn something in different ways, and the important point is that we should satisfy our students needs by combining our experiences and their needs, because they have different attitudes to learning. And of course, aptitude, this is the natural talents, and some students may seem to be more um, ready than the other students to learn. and of course the preferred learning styles. So some students might be more comfortable in a spoken language, whereas others might be more comfortable in written materials. And lastly is intelligence. So it, of course, it also has an effect, especially if you're learning a foreign or a second language. So that would be all in my part, and Miss Solikar will discuss the rest. So that will be all, and thank you.